Good morning. I'm Elissa, chairperson of the Utah Geological Survey Board. I'd like to call this meeting of the Utah Geological Survey Board to order. It is now 8:30 a.m. on January 17th, 2024. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually with Google Meet. And in compliance with Utah's open meeting laws, this meeting is being recorded in its entirety. This recording is classified as public record. And the following board members are in attendance: Elissa Richards, Dave Garbrecht en route, as we understand, Ken Fleck remote, Becky Hammond remote, Sam Quigley remote, Riley Brinkerhoff en route, and the following board members are absent: Rick Chestnut. Any others? I think that's it. The following individuals representing the Utah Geological Survey and the Department of Natural Resources are in attendance: Bill Keach, Division Director; Mike Hylland, Deputy Director; Russell Fillmore, Financial Manager; Patrick Emberson, Patrick Ingerson, Cheryl Wing, and Holly Brown. I thought it was Holly. There's Holly. Hi there.
And I think we have Mike Vandenberg online.
And Mike Vandenberg online. Excellent. As a courtesy to everyone participating in this meeting, at this time we ask for all cell phone, pagers, and other electronic devices to be turned off or charged or changed to the silent mode. And board motions and votes must be reflected in the minutes and recorded by individual board member. Let us now proceed with the agenda.
I guess that's me.
Yes.
Oh, we will be muted on basically every laptop.
Mine's muted.
Okay. And I think we'll be good. Cheryl, are you? I don't know if it's yours.
It's me. I have it here. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. No worries, got it.
Audio. Oh, we didn't hear your voice twice.
I know.
Well, good morning. As Elissa mentioned, I'm Bill Keach. Here is the agenda that was put out and published out there. We'll start first with the action items. I think we have enough of a quorum to approve, so I wanted to make sure we have that. So we'll start with this stuff, and we'll get to the staff here in a couple of minutes. So, the contact, yes, do you have a motion for that?
I need to approve the minutes first.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry,
Okay.
my bad.
I have a motion to approve the UGS board meeting minutes from August 9th, 2023.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all those in favor to approve the minutes from the board meeting, say aye.
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 All those opposed? The approval of the minutes for the UGS board meeting on August 9th are now approved. We also need a formal approval of project proposals since our last meeting in August. Could I get a motion to approve that?
I'll make the motion that we approve the contract proposals from last meeting.
Thank you, Sam. All those who, oh, I need a second. That's right. Becky?
I'll second it.
Oh, that's Ken.
Yes.
Thank you. Becky on the first, Ken on the second. Thank you. All those who choose to formally approve the project proposal since our last meeting, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have formally approved the project proposal since the last meeting. The motion is approved. And I think we need some discussion on the adoption of the license, the UGS PG licensure policy.
Sure.
I would ask the question, would that be better done after the other two who are en route?
I think so.
Or maybe we postpone that to
Later in the meeting.
We can do that.
Yep.
I
That
think
sounds
it'd
good.
be good to, yeah, for them to have opportunity, I think, to.
For input.
Yeah.
That's a good call.
So we'll come back to that. We had handouts, I think Mike has, but we've also got it up here, so we'll come back to that.
We might want to wait to have them here also for the dates, 2024 meeting dates.
So we'll delay this part as
Those,
well.
that third and fourth item.
We can do that. Then I'll just mention our UGS Employee of the Year, which was named in December in our December staff meeting, was Paul Inkenbrad. And how many of you know Paul? That he's one of our great groundwater folks. And so I just struggled to find a picture. So we finally found one for him. So anyway, that was Paul. In terms of retirements, Jody retired. Can't remember what the exact date was, November 17th? I think November 10th or 11th was her last day. Maybe it was the 16th. Was her official retirement date. So anyway, we were sad to see her leave. She had a good, strong command of our finances and helped keep us, doing it the right way. So she's off doing other things now.
Will you give Paul our congratulations and
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. We'll let her know. In terms of new hires, it took us a couple months. We did hire a new finance manager, Russ Fillmore, who's in the room. You want to say something? Say hello, Russ. Introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Russ Gilmore. I've been with public safety as the finance manager. Just newly hired last week, financial manager here. I've been with the state for 21 years. Graduate of Utah State, the MBA from Western Governors University. I have children and grew up in southern Utah, in Washington City, and but married life mostly here in Salt Lake.
well, welcome. Good to have you.
Good for us. Did Ben make it this morning?
I haven't seen him this morning.
He was trying to be here. Yeah. So Ben DeLynn, we hired, I don't think the board has met him yet either. Ben DeLynn is our contract and proposal, our grant analyst. Something we've been working towards for a couple of years to bring in we were just killing Jody, probably why she retired. But handling all the grants as well as all the finances was a big job. And so we brought in Ben. If he comes in a little later, we'll introduce him. He's been a big help, big asset to that. And data management, we're probably a little ahead. Clinton Lund, see here. No, they were planning to have him come. So we have a couple people wander in.
Yeah, I guess, right, 8:50 was.
8:50. Okay, so we're a little ahead of schedule. That's all right. And Rachel.
Yes.
Where's Rachel? Rachel made it.
I made it. I'm Rachel. I am in the data management program. I'll be working on the grant-funded groundwater data dashboard. I grew up in Seattle. I've lived in Utah for several years now. I'm just finishing up my master's degree at BYU. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Welcome. Thank you.
And you volunteered here before, right?
Yeah, back in like 2020 or 2021,
Yeah.
the hazards program. So it's been a dream to work in a geological survey ever since my first geology class. So I'm really excited to be here.
We're glad you started yesterday.
Nice.
So she wasn't in the email I sent you
Yeah.
last week because she wasn't employed yet. But she was here yesterday, but I will have her come and say hello. Okay. And Zach Anderson was created as supervisor in the mapping program. And part of this is the outcome of the state's pay for performance bill that got passed a couple of years ago, which is trying to get, rather than having one person responsible for 20 others or whatever it is, created some supervisor type positions to help manage all that. So Zach, I think, is the only we hadn't announced before. In terms of positions to fill in the near future, we've been advertising. We had funded by the legislature to hire an INSAR specialist. but they didn't fund it fully. They approved it and then at the last minute cut it, only gave us like 53% of the money we needed. So we've been advertising and we got 8 applicants. And at the end of December, we closed the position. We've also gotten some funding from the Division of Emergency Management to help fund this position as well. So we haven't hired anybody, but we'll be in the process of interviewing here over the next few weeks. But this will be a big act because if you remember, INSAR is basically we can to measure subtle changes in elevation over like every 28 days. So across the state, we'll be able to help monitor for both landslides, hazards, and groundwater subsidence due to withdrawal. And I don't know if we've got a few others out there in the works, so I think groundwater's got a position. And so that's kind of where we were in the next part. So again, we're a little ahead, but that's all right because we're waiting for the rest of the board to show up. Okay, if we move forward, any questions? Okay, so one of the big things that Energy and Minerals have been working on for the last year, we've been working with the Office of Energy Development. Some funding from the feds came through them. And so Mike Vandenberg had envisioned a website where you can kind of go and find out anything you want to know about energy in our state. And so we actually brought an employee, Claire Decker, who's in our group. You may have met her before. She came from OED over to us to work on this website. What I'm going to do, I think we got the time. Let's see if I can open this up. And I'm going to bring it over onto the other screen as soon as it comes out. Okay. So you should all be able to, can everybody see that? Anybody online have a problem?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. So this is a website that basically, if you want to know like about coal, you can click on here and wait for the data. And you can find out where coal-fired power plants are, or where the coal resources are, how thick it is. It's all kinds of statistics and data. And this is true for any one of our energy sources in the state. You want to know where solar is? We do a similar thing. So this was envisioned by us, funded through money from the feds through OED, the state's energy fund. And this was built entirely by our data management group. They did it.
I looked at it, it's impressive.
This is pretty impressive. So if you need, it was hard to find a lot of this data if you need to go look for it. And so this one-stop shop was kind of the big answer. So anyway, we just thought it was a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it's an ongoing. There's visions for version 2 to add more stuff and more data. But we got it out in December. So anyway, just make you aware of that one. So that was one of the big things that Energy Minerals had been working on. This carbon safe phase 2 is a internet connection. And we still look okay.
I still see it, but it might go off in a few seconds. I'm not sure.
Okay. Just following the messages.
I think it came back. Is that the green check or?
Okay. We'll assume we're okay until they tell us we're not.
We can still see it, yeah.
Okay, so carbon safe phase 2, processing the Milligan Basin. This was a carbon sequestration project they were looking at near Bonanza, which is south of Vernal. And it took a long time to get the funding lined up in the project tied together with DOE, but it finally got, all the contracts got signed, and they're gonna, I think, have a kickoff meeting next week out in the basin. I think Mike Vandenberg is online. Do you want to say anything about this, Mike? Put you on the spot.
This project is to, like Bill said, assess the CO2 storage potential on a Sitla block. It's called the Bonanza Sitla block. It's just east of the little hamlet of Bonanza, south of Vernal. We're looking at lower Cretaceous sands. We're looking at Entrada, maybe even the Weber. The ultimate plan is to drill 11,000 foot strat well, collect 800 feet of core from these zones of interest. Unfortunately, as most of you know, the wells in the area only penetrate down into the Mesa Verde. And there's very few wells that drill through the Mancos down to the lower Cretaceous or Entrada. So we think it's a really good place for storage of CO2, but we need significant more data to be able to do the full assessment. So that's why the plan is to drill the well.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Several more reports have come out. Two ones that weren't, we put them out on our webpage, which these are kind of interim reports, some of them, but they got a lot of traction. A lot of people interested in lithium out there. And so Andrew and I think Taylor Bowden worked on one or both of these. I know Andrew worked on both of them. I also added Utah Mining 2022. The report came on that. So if you want to know any statistics about mining in the state, that came out also at this time frame. Hazards. This just came through a couple weeks ago. I thought there was just one grant. I thought I got 2 notices for the same grant because they're for the exact same dollar amount. I had to pay close attention to the grant number, but there was close to $1 million available through the Division of Emergency Management. And so they've sent both of those grants to us to kind of 500,000 total. Our match is 25% of that. And so one to map using INSAR to get this ground deformation mapping going across the entire state. It's written up in more detail in the report if you want to read it in the director's notes. But also to do more geologic hazard mapping along the Wasatch Front. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. So the new INSAR hire will be working directly on these projects. Steve Bowman, who was here a little bit earlier, also has gotten a grant from NASA to work on what they call SAR. It's a different version of it. SAR is a newer version, but the synthetic aperture radar data. And as we archive it, then it will go back to the Fed Center base in Alaska, become part of the national database. A couple big projects they're working on, and I think, yeah, I have a slide here. Next month, we'll be hosting 2 more working groups on earthquakes. We did one last year for the Western U.S. We hosted it on Monday, the February 5th. There'll be one on Utah Quaternary faults, and then on Tuesday on Basin and Range. So they're 2-day-long meetings that will be hosted here. I don't know if they'll be in this room or over in the auditorium. In the auditorium over our main building. So the two big events that will be going on. And I left this from last year. You know, we had asked the legislature last year for money, and the governor put it in his budget to fund landslide support. Because we've been asking for multiple years. But every time we got to the executive committee, it gets cut out. So this year I was told if you put it in the budget, we'll probably get funded. So I put it in our building block as one of our building blocks, and it didn't even get out of the governor's office this year, which I was surprised considering all the landslides we had. So we didn't get that. They didn't make any of our building blocks at all. So anyway, last year we proposed it. The legislature says you'll get it if you ask, but at this point I don't see anyone sponsoring a bill to do it. How quickly they forget. Which bothers me. And you know, our job is to look forward. You know, and I've said this a lot. You know, the reason we were proposing these was not because we knew we were going to have a wet year. Nobody knew you were going to have a wet year, but we're pushing people into areas that are less and less sick geologically, and so that's why we're trying to get out in front of these things by proposing these type of positions to do this type of work. And it just feels like no one's listening. So we'll see what happens. You know, we have another year of this. The groundwater group, again, this is probably our biggest program now in all of UGS between groundwater and wetlands. They are doing some really big projects. We'll talk about a couple of them. The Great Salt Lake Shoreline Preserve was a big report that went out across the state. different number of state and private organizations. We're looking forward to this report, and it's out now. Also, the Emory Johns Valley Bryce Canyon City water budget, for division water rights. This is some of the data we got subpoenaed for before the report was done, because the folks in Bryce Canyon City wanted to see the data. We're trying to hold them back. Let us get it done. So we made it through a subpoena deposition, but the report is out, or at least being done internally. Other projects we're working on, Pivot Valley, and then for a water budget study in Matheson Wetlands, which is out near Moab. They're in the middle of writing up these reports right now. These will be, we've done several visits or hosted meetings out in Moab on the Matheson Wetlands. It's kind of a swampy area that people are really interested in. And how's the groundwater affecting the salinity tests that we're doing? The Great Salt Lake probably continues to dominate a lot of what we do. Today, beginning this week, the U.S. Geological Survey is drilling 3 water level monitoring wells for us. They're doing one, I think they started Monday. They may be done today, a well out along the Antelope Island Causeway. So right before the gate. So if you were to drive out there and went to the gate, they'd actually have a handout that would tell you what they're doing. And they're going to be drilling 2 other wells and coring them. And other parts, a little more remote, will require an all-wheel drive vehicle to get out to. But so we're working on that. The big deal here is people understand how much groundwater is getting to the Great Salt Lake. Because we talk about the Bear River, the Kroger River, and I think there's the Weaver River that provides some funding or water to the lake. But what's the role of groundwater? And I don't think anybody fully understands that yet. And so this is a big collaborative project that we're working on to update the water model, because nobody really quite fully understands that. So we're working together with the USGS and water rights on this. And there's
Excuse me, Bill.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, those 3 wells, I wonder how deep they'll be.
I don't think any one of them is going to be more than 200 feet, if I remember right.
That's interesting to me, because I would think that the groundwater movement into the Great Salt Lake could be pretty deep.
Yeah, and we could probably send a note to Hugh and ask him, and we can get back with that maybe before the meeting's over. But I think they're around 200 feet, if I remember right. Did you remember it at all, Mike? Okay, I'll see if I can dig up the answer to that question.
It's just, I was just a bit curious, Bill. That's okay.
Great question. But
I have another thought on the energy publication you did.
Yep.
I wonder if it's worth showing the hydrogen project down near the IPP plant as part of the energy mix now in Utah.
When you mean on the website?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I wonder if that could play in phase 2.
Yeah. And Mike, do you have a comment on that?
If you go to that topics coming soon, we're actually going to have an entire page dedicated to hydrogen.
Okay.
We just haven't finished it yet. That'll be released in the next month or so.
Fantastic. We're getting to be a pretty exciting state.
Yes.
Well, as soon as I was in a meeting yesterday on geothermal, and it's like there's a lot of projects going on in geothermal in Utah, but very little of the electricity is staying in the state. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. So anyway, okay. Good comments. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, we'll see if we can find out how deep those wells are, but they were only maybe a couple hundred feet is my recollection. Yep. But we're going to core them as well, so we can understand that the different physical properties of the wells there. So again, the Great Salt Lake, did you, in the news, I released a big plan for the Great Salt Lake. Did you see that coming out of Brian Steed's group, our committee, the czar, the Great Salt Lake czar, our former executive director. So anyway, we'll be figuring out how we're going to be involved in all those projects, but our folks will continue to be involved in the Great Salt Lake work. It's dominating a lot of what we do. Shifting over to wetlands, EPA work has been a big part of the funding for our wetlands group. And I guess that it was in that cycle that at the end of the year, they finished up applying for 3 new grants. And so those are in proposals that you guys approved. A couple of projects that are getting near completion. Wetlands along the Provo River up at Summit County is done. And we're also working on wetlands in Utah Valley. That'll be another project. Ties into the Utah Valley. What's the lake there in Utah Lake? Yeah, Utah Lake. It just didn't sound right coming out of my mouth. And I know that Diane's been working for quite a long time on a new book really, on wetland plants in the Great Basin to update the guide for that. And that's been a big effort. And so it's almost getting ready to go through our review process. But it's been a project that's been in process for a while. We may hear Mark Milligan talk a little bit more about this today. And there's a lot of big, the cycle is now to apply. So our guys spent a lot of December updating that, making the new state map proposal.
As you're starting the legislature cycle, how much support are you getting from the legislature for, replacing or adding to your mapping staff?
Now you'll see later, all of the building blocks we proposed this year, not one was included in the governor's budget.
Oh, wow.
Not one. Yeah. This is an odd year, but everyone's saying it's going to be a tight year. So we're not getting any support this year. We'll talk a little bit more about there are some legislators that are kind of running on their own. Then they do it as one, the governor's budget is a starting point. But the legislatures, they're the ones that appropriate money. So we may see some things. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But yeah, I guess my biggest challenge is finding to match the money that we can get here. And so there's, I want to go to the next slide here. One of the big things that we're really excited about is we've added a member from the Navajo Reservation to our state mapping advisory committee. And we've been attending a number of, I think every quarter they hold the Utah Tribal Council, which all the different tribes I've attended one. I think Stefan has presented it and attended. Matthew Morse, who you'll see later today, has also attended those meetings. So we've been working to develop relationships. So at this point, we have an agreement to map a quad on the Navajo Reservation, which would be a first. We're excited about that. That's a big step. And so those sorts of things don't always happen. Part of the state map proposal was also doing some stratigraphic work. We're still trying to, for a continuing process to update the 500K map, which is the big Utah geology map. That one, if I remember right, I heard that they're taking comments from people. There's like 4,000 suggestions so far. That's a lot.
Wow.
I mean, you think about what happens when you take a detailed map at a 7.5 minute quad, you convert it into that. You lose a lot of stuff. And so there's a lot of work that's ongoing on that. So we continue to work on that. What else? We're trying to work on some of our, as technology changes, workflows can start to change. How do we incorporate 3D type work into our mapping? What can we use in the field technologically? There's all kinds of things. So we're trying to speed up that process to get a map. I mean, we have a ton of maps that are still preliminary, that have been sitting in our data that never have gotten out there. So we're trying to work on those processes as well. Paleo, Jim Kirkland, it was out, I think, for like 3 weeks. Was it 3 weeks? Yeah. Out filming with the BBC's trying to come up with a new series on dinosaurs. So they came to Utah and spent 3 weeks with Jim filming. I don't think that's public knowledge yet, although this is a public meeting, so the word may be out. Let's see who's listening. The Smithsonian sent some people out. I don't know how many of you know what palynology is, but so what's palynology?
Study of spores that come up with time frame studies.
Yeah. The spores and plants that can help us understand. Pollen, that's a good way to put it. Thank you, Becky. Yeah, so we're looking at, well, go ahead.
Oh, that was it. Just
Okay.
pollen. That was one of my favorite classes.
Really?
Yeah.
See, for field people, this is a big deal because it helps you date the stratigraphy. So apparently there's some really unique samples, I believe, in Utah. So the Smithsonian came out to kind of collect those kind of rare samples that kind of a one of a kind in our area. And we'll hear a little bit more about this. We're still trying to figure out what to do with the mega block. I had a call from what's the word I want to call him? Not a lobbyist, but an influencer. How's that? who called me in the summer and said, look, I've got $1 million. The governor's going to give you $1 million to get this block done. 500,000 one time and 500,000 ongoing, but it didn't show up in the budget. And we continue to hear talk, and we've had people reach out to us. Hey, we've had some talk with the legislators. They think they want to do something. So you'll hear Mark talk about a letter we're putting together, kind of a 1 or 2 pager. Will it come to us? But right now, the mega block is sitting there with no one working on it, which is a shame.
Sitting here.
Right here in our end of the core center. So our big need there is you really need someone that can work on it. And where do we store them? GIO, they've been busy for, I put this up last year. I'll probably put it up every time. They do a ton of work with the public. Holly is our PIO. She's here. You all know Holly. But people tend to continue to recreate outdoors, and they want to have information. So they come to our bookstore. They want maps. Hunters want maps. We do a lot of cool stuff. Mark Milligan, I've mentioned a couple times. He'll come and talk about Earth Science Week a little bit later. With this, I moved it out of this one, but the STEM Action Center, which is a state group, we've helped them create a new set of rock, mineral, and fossil sets that can be used around the state. Many of you may know that we have boxes that you can check out, take to your schools. A lot of people don't know those exist, but the teachers that do come and use them are pretty free. Sometimes our hardest time is getting them to come back, right? But sometimes. Some people like to hang on. I like to hang on too. Here's a program that I know Jackson is one working with this group, the STEM Community Alliance program, getting all kinds of different people together, particularly those in youth that are in facilities. Incarcerated this time, how do we educate them better? So that's going on with GIO. The bookstore continues to be a place a lot of people come. Every time there's a big meeting, a lot of people end up wandering through the bookstore. We sold a ton of calendars this year. Did any board member not get your calendar? Silence is a good answer. Silence is a great answer. Okay.
I even got the puzzles. They were puzzles.
Okay, good.
Everybody in oil and gas seems like they got mailed one by Mike. So
Yeah, that's good. And I mail a ton to our legislature and to the board. So,
still think the board needs to be able to submit photos for that, don't you?
I think so too.
well, they're on my employee list. So, I mean, some of you show up on my list of employees. We can consider that. Because technically they are, right? Interesting. Why, you got some you want to submit?
Oh, you've got some good ones.
Got some good ones.
Save some photos.
That's some fun. So when's the deadline is in early June?
That sounds about right.
I just don't like Vandenberg have more photos than I do.
Okay, but again, the bookstore, not that we get a lot of them, but people that do rate us online, say we're doing a good job. Also at times I know that Tori's been out with our groundwater folks and with others trying to get to do some field work as well as just the books, not just the bookstore, but to broaden their experiences. Jackson, before he moved over to be a geologist in GIO, was in the bookstore, and he's been out in the field quite a bit. So it's broadening their experience. We get it. What is also amazing is we get a ton of the amount of questions they answer. You know, they ask a geologist. I think I had a report from Mark last week. We had 5 meteoronauts, so meteorites, wrongs. But you know, a lot of people bring in and say, I don't think I put it in here. Is the story about the gold, magnetic gold in the guy's eye, is that in here?
I
don't think I put it in.
know if it made it in here. That was a good one.
I think this was last week. A guy called and asked if we could help him get the magnetic gold out of his eyes.
Oh. Because his computer monitor exploded while he was playing video games. And now the sun and the moon were following him.
Yeah. Well, my point is that we get from the mundane to the extremely odd. And so then he asked, you know, Mark, I think Mark, whoever talked to him told him, look, we're not doctors, but so they referred him to mental health. And he said, yeah, I have an appointment with them already. Which is good, but I mean, our guys are trying to steer people like this to the right places for the right resources, trying to do good, you know. But we get some weird ones. We had some guys that show up with some samples. What was it? Electrified pyrite crystals from the Democratic Republic of the Congo ones, you know. These are things that circulate on the internet that are often not true. People bring them in. We get some weird stuff. My point is our GIO folks, they work really hard and they deal with a lot of different people from the public. Our posts, we have a huge following when it comes to our social media presence. I continue to get amazing reports. I go to a meeting I went to GSA in Pittsburgh. And I had other state agencies come and tell me how much they like our posts, social media posts. They're trying to emulate them. So we get a lot of that. And you already heard about the t-shirts and the puzzle. Okay. And we continue. Jackie does a lot. Jackie DeWolf in our program, GIO, tends to still do a lot of work for DNR as a whole and other divisions within DNR. Data management, it seems like data, you think you get it all uploaded and then all of a sudden there's a whole because that's one thing we do produce a lot of at the UGS's data. And so these guys, we're kind of an anomaly in all of DNR in that we have a very skilled staff that can do web presences. So when we built, which helps us skirt a bit of a fine line between what the state wants to do as ETS, Department of Division of Technology Services, and us. But we're going, gangbusters. The new Rock Hunter app was updated, added 50+ new sites to it. Updates to the map portal makes a lot of things easier to see. We proposed, one of our building blocks we proposed was, let's look at AI. What can we do in the geosciences and how AI might help? We didn't get funded, but we're still talking with the USGS about maybe doing a pilot project. But it's something that's going to come, and when we have this much data, AI is one of those. I look at it, it's a tool that can help you do an unstructured search of data. So you can you can search unstructured data without having to reformat it. So all these apps had their data updated over in the last year, or in the last 2 months. And we're working on converting, well, putting our roots in Earthquake has got 2 things going on right now. One is to convert it to a website. It's a brochure that we put out. We're also translating it to Spanish. And DEM has ordered like 30,000 prints on the Spanish version. So we're working with John Cross over at DM on that. And then, as you know, we're hosting the AASG meeting in June. And, you know, the National Association for State Geologists, and we're standing up our own website so that people can register and do that. And our guys are doing that work internally. And I think I'm going to pause here because I think did we ever hear from? Yeah, I saw Ben here. And now we got Riley. We haven't heard from Dave though, right? I did for Riley pre-event, but we had delayed discussion some of our earlier topics for more people to get on. Has Dave Garbrick joined online at all? Anybody else joined online? Okay. So I'm going to introduce Ben. This is Ben DeLynn. Say hi, Ben.
Hello.
Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ben. I have been with UGS for about 3 months now. I'm new contracts and grants analyst, managing and administering some of our grant programs. Before this, I worked in clean energy project finance, originally from the East Coast, from Philadelphia. Studied Johns Hopkins for undergrad, and been in Utah for the last few years. I'm really happy to be part of this group.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Ben, what was your last name?
DeLynn, D-L-I-N. It's a funky one. Someone lost the vowel at some point.
Oh, we love it. It's all right. So this is 2 of our board members that do not met them.
No, if you can introduce yourself.
I'm Riley Brincroft, geologist, also controlling.
Excellent.
Elissa Richards, National Energy Foundation.
I've worked with the National Energy Foundation, tangentially in the past.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Should we have gone on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for everybody here.
There's Sam.
There's a few.
There's Sam.
I'm Sam Quigley. Yes, nice to have you aboard, Ben.
Thank you. Nice to be aboard.
I think we got Becky.
Yeah, this is Becky, and yeah, welcome aboard, Ben. And I think we met at the Christmas luncheon.
We did, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we can see the others. I know Ken's online.
Hi,
right?
Ben.
There's Ken.
There he is.
Hello.
Okay. So that's everybody. At least it's in our meeting. Okay. When do you want to circle back? Do you want to wait a little longer on those topics?
For Dave.
Yeah.
I was saying that he's probably joining. I think we should just go ahead and do it.
Okay. So I'm gonna cycle back to the earlier slides. There we go. Okay. So you want to talk about this, Mike? You want me to talk about it?
Yeah, either way. Introduce it or.
So I'll introduce it. We talked about this last time, and that just as a reminder was we're getting a lot of newer, younger people. And so there's a lot of, many of our positions in the geology track require by statute that they be a licensed geologist in the state of Utah. And so geology position does not, but a project geologist, senior geologist, senior scientist, program manager, and the state geologist, and I think the deputy director are all required to be licensed geologists. But that also raised the question of how do we encourage our newer staff who might be a geotech, senior geotech, or a geologist to go ahead and get the licensing exam. Because exams now cost $600, $650, There's two exams. One for what they call fundamentals of geology, and the other one, the practice of geology, the FG and the PG licensing. And those exams are administered twice a year by the Association of State Boards of Geology, ASBOG. So people often refer to them affectionately as the ASBOG tests. So they're the same exams that are given nationally. Some states have a local version or that's unique to their state. So we were starting to get questions of what will we reimburse up, because up until now we've not reimbursed for taking the exam. And
Is that a budget issue or is that more of a philosophy issue?
I don't know the history on that.
I could maybe touch on that. I think it was just a lack of clarity issue in the existing policy. And I should say policies. As I hunted for things, I came up with existing UGS board policies in 3 different places, and a UGS policy in addition to that combined things from the board policies, but were worded in a slightly different way. But all of them just talk about, if I can find the language here. It was not easy to kind of parse out the details of the existing stuff.
I mean, just for, larger geologic community, dam fees and licensing were always covered by my different employers.
In the private sector.
In the private sector.
Yes.
And, if we can match that, I mean, we're not going to match private sector for pay, but if we can do something like those required things, if we have the budget for it.
Right. That's always part of it.
So yeah, the existing language just used licensure fees, but there are exam fees, licensure exam fees, there are initial license registration fees, and then there are renewal fees. Some of which we are compelled by DNR policy, which stems from state code, to pay the renewal fees if the position requires a license.
That's $125 a year, something like that.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, yeah.
So
The exam fees and the initial registration fees, we may or may not be compelled to pay those.
The exam is about 150.
no, I think one is I think they're each 325.
Oh, it's gone up a lot.
Well, not in the last 15, 20 years, they haven't.
I'm old.
Yeah, you're old. You're getting old. But because I sit on the ASBOG board, so I dug into that. But so here's the bottom line: is that if you're under the state finance rules, we're not allowed to pay for their license fees if it's not required for their job. Okay, so what we're putting together here in the proposal is 2 things. One, that will pay, if they take the exam and successfully pass it, we'll reimburse them for half of the cost.
Because if it's 320, so 640, because you usually do both exams at the same time. 640.
Some people do.
That's a stiff.
It is, and that was what our folks were telling us. That's a stiff thing to bear. A lot of our newer people are taking the fundamentals first because they got to have X number of years of experience before they can take the FG. A lot of folks maybe like you had already been in the industry working for a while before you went and take them. A lot of if we hire someone in as a project geologist, they've probably already been in the industry for a while and they're taking both. One of our recent new hires is going to take it here in the next year, and she's been in the oil and gas business for 5+ years. She's going to take them both on the same day. I think both Matthew Morris and Lauren took them on the same day. But if you're just fresh out of school and you're a new geologist, you're not even eligible to take the practice of geology exam. And so 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 the policy, and this is up for discussion from you, what we're proposing in the language was we will reimburse for half upon successful completion. In other words, we don't want to be paying for them to keep taking and not passing it. And then in terms of licensing, we will continue with our policy of paying for the license exam if it's required. We had Jody before Russ was here check. We couldn't, if a geologist wanted to get the license, we couldn't pay for that license fee under state policy right now. We looked into it to see if we could, and the answer was no. So, but we continue to pay for everyone that's a project geologists are hired. So that's what's in the language of these two. And if you want to read through it, if you want to discuss it, if you want to change it, both of them say as funding allows.
Which is good because obviously you have some bad funding years.
Yep.
I mean, they've happened in the past.
They do.
I would suggest if it's required and if you have the budget that we would, offer to pay the full exam is, what I'd love to see, just to match what's fairly common practice in the wider private world. But obviously I think it's still the same caveat, as budget allows. That's just a lot for a state employee, I imagine.
It is, and for our younger ones, where housing costs have gone up. Yeah. Well, that's up. Again, we'll let you as a board discuss that.
No.
See what you want to do. We can change that.
We pay for education.
Yeah, I guess, just a reminder that the board is a policy board. And so ultimately, we're looking for the board's recommendation and approval on whatever we put into place.
I mean, read through it. I mean, I like where it's at. I mean, I have nothing in, with the exception is if you have the cap of the funds available.
So we changes to say for the full amount. I would still suggested that they get a passing score or reimbursement for it.
So they get past the score and then they apply for reimbursement.
Right.
I think it's fair.
That's fair.
So, I mean, if you're going to pay for it, make sure that they did, skin in the game to stay hard.
Yeah. Okay.
My comment would be that even though the license may not be required for the position they're holding, it's always good policy to prepare people to take advanced jobs. And the only way they can prepare is to acquire this license. And so having them prepared to fill higher positions is only smart poker.
Yeah, that's why we're proposing that we go ahead and pay for licensing, or not licensing, but at least the examination fees.
It also shows more of a professional light on the more you have that are doing this, there it is for the UGS.
And we would consider paying it for the geology level, but state finance policy won't allow us to do that. Okay, so does the board need to vote on that? I don't know how that works.
I mean, we can vote, and if it's not needed, then you can ignore it. And if it is needed, you'll have to vote on it.
Because this will become part of our UGS policy. So if the board supports it, I would probably at least take a vote to see if everybody supports the change to full reimbursement.
Right.
That's one. Before you do that, because there were two parts to this. I'm just going back. On the first page, one change that we are asking to do is previously the policy said if you came from outside of the UGS and were hired and you had a year to get the license, but if you were a UGS employee already and you were promoted from geologist to project geologist, you had to already have the license in hand.
Would that be useful for you to have a year for those potential employees? That way, or
I'm saying you need.
So if you say you need somebody to play, and because the ASBOG's only offered, in set amounts of time.
Twice a year.
And it takes a while to study for it.
That's
So, you may want the flexibility of being able to promote as you need to, and then give them a year to.
And that's the change we're asking to make. We propose that here, up here where it says, new UGS employees hired at the level and employees who have recently been promoted will have 12 months. That's a change we're asking to make. That was the other part before you vote on this.
I fully support that.
Yeah, I think we actually talked about that last time.
We did.
And we were in support of that.
Yeah, you were, but you just said bring the language
bring the
to it.
language here.
So we came back with
Yeah.
the language now to get the
Yeah,
board to
I
approve it.
support that. So
Anybody online? Any disagreement?
No disagreement. That sounds good.
I have a question about the second paragraph.
Okay,
In the middle of that paragraph, it says the UGS may revoke the program of reimbursement for exam fees and initial registration fees at any time. That just seems like a strange place to put that statement. Should it be at the end of the paragraph?
No, Mike chiming in. The reason it's there is that the exam fees and the initial license registration fee are not required by DNR policy, whereas reimbursement for the renewal fees is.
Okay,
So we don't have the option of not reimbursing renewal fees.
okay.
the bottom line here is if we run out of money,
what's the typical cost annually for this for the UGS? You know,
Jody can tell him.
Tony, Russ, you have the answer now, right?
How many, PG licenses?
I just don't see it as.
It's every 2 years.
Yeah, it's probably not a huge, right, I can't imagine it would be.
With the amount of new young employees we have, the exam fees are the bigger issue.
Right.
They're the bigger one. The licensing fees, we've not considered a burden. Yeah. At least financially.
For as long as there's been PG licensure in the state, I don't think there's been a year where the UGS has ever considered, not reimbursing.
It's 120, right? 125. It's 120, 125.
It's not, yes.
So you take 50 people, probably, times that. We're not talking huge chunk of money. Yeah, that's probably about right. In that neighborhood, around 50 people, maybe a little less. I don't have those charts in front of me right now. Okay, so anyway, those are kind of the three issues. So change it to full reimbursement. And I know there'll be people that are going to be thankful that the board chose that option. They're going to kind of be thankful to you.
So, and then the language in that first paragraph, and that makes sense within the 12 months.
Yeah.
And then just change the one word. So should I go ahead and propose a motion for it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I propose a motion to accept the Utah Professional Geologist Licensure requirements and UGS support as listed, except for in the first sentence of the second paragraph, changing from half the amount of the licensure exam fees to the full amount of the licensure exam fees. Do I have?
Second that.
Okay. Can I get a first too? So Ken, will you do that?
So moved, yes.
Okay, so Ken, Riley, any, those who are in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the motion to approve the Utah Professional Geologist Licensure requirements to UGS support motion is approved.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So, did you?
Yes, back to that license fee, because I'm wondering when will that start effective for the full amount reimbursement? Because we have some employee just recently got in, half 50%.
No, go ahead, Mike.
Well, just, yeah, I think the board needs to, make a recommendation on, when this goes into effect in terms of any retroactive action for staff who've recently, just recently taken an exam or something. Can we?
I think we can make it retroactive for
Till,
a year.
I would say, we started talking about this with staff in October. So if I take for everyone from October forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Good comment.
And then.
Did you pass the test? Congratulations.
My goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
So Q3 23 and onward.
Yeah, okay. Then as far as, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, in general, kind of the existence of UGS board policies versus UGS policies. And would it make sense to just make this a UGS policy?
Yes.
I mean, the board is the policy making body of the UGS, but I think having policies in two different places is kind of confusing. Yeah, agree. Okay.
Yeah, and it doesn't say board policy here, it says UGS policy.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion.
I think that's.
Have all UGS policies that are stemming from board actions as UGS.
Yes,
Sound good?
yes.
Okay. Great. Good.
April 17th, I'll be Dezo with a bunch of your employees.
And Dezo,
I'm done.
just to let you can do another rap trip.
I go with Flagstaff now.
And I'm invited this time, of course.
I need someone to cook the food and bring around.
Because, yeah, so the dates that have been selected here are kind of that traditional. Like, the board can decide these dates.
I mean, if it's, again, I've missed board meetings before. It's not gonna be the end of the world. Probably gets done faster when I'm gone. I also can do the week after if that's okay.
This is board decisions.
Kind of week before.
Or,
Probably, yeah.
so like the 10th,
Mhm.
10th if you get free.
Which start are you talking about?
April
Proposed board dates.
17th to the 10th.
Oh, okay. Fine with me.
Check real quick.
Yeah, I don't have problems on my calendar.
When that's in May, I guess.
What?
Any legislative interim session.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that
Usually
we can work
try
on
to
that.
avoid those.
Yeah, we have the legislature meeting today. We're in front, by the way, we're in front of the legislature next Wednesday. In the appropriations committee.
Were you talking about changing April 17th to April 10th?
Yes.
That's a proposal. Yeah.
That's 2 days after the eclipse.
Oh, yeah, that is eclipse. Which would be,
The solar eclipse. I'm probably not going to be around on the 10th.
you probably won't be here. I might not be here.
I'm just saying, I don't think you should change the date, but I won't be able to go probably if it's on the 10th.
Someone said it was the 24th, not good.
I'm gone.
So, say you want. In the past, we've had our spring board meetings in May. Early May.
I'm in first.
It's on my calendar open.
Yeah, okay, I'll be gone May 1st, but
You all are on your own.
how about the next week, the 8th?
Wednesday?
No. You did a week
Tuesday?
Be Tuesday, Thursday.
Would you be available on, 30th? May?
Through
May?
through the April.
On April, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not me.
What about April 11th? Ken, are you back by the 11th?
Yeah, that would probably work. I'll be driving from Dallas to get back. It takes a couple of days.
Yeah, we can do the 11th.
Do April 11th.
Look at our calendars.
Does that work, Becky?
Yes.
Okay. We'll say the 11th then. Okay. So make a note of that, April 11th. Thank you. How about August 7th? Too far out for anyone to care.
That works for me right now.
Me too.
On the calendar now.
Board field trip, Mike just kind of focused it around where we've had it in the past. How does this fit with your GS? Is it PG meeting? What is that?
It's October 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay, so this won't conflict then. Okay. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later about where I'm just planning the question. We have a separate slide near the end to talk about ideas. We need to talk about that right now. But this one, the client, you need to be thinking about what you might want to do on the field trip. And then we just kind of pick the same date next year for January. Okay. Oh. There we go. Where's the proposed dates? 11. Oops. I missed that update on there. Okay. We're good. So those are the items we skipped. Anything else? We're scheduled for a break at 10. We okay to wait till 10? Or we did, for that, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about finding anybody?
Oh, we want to be fun. Yeah, we can.
I'm gonna have you next on the list.
Let's do that.
Okay. So I put this year, we're in not good shape, but fair shape. And I'll talk a little bit about why. It's gonna be a tight year, they're saying financially. We'll see where that leads us to. Mineral lease forecast, I keep saying this every year, it's such a wild card of what it's gonna be. We were appropriated, but see the number there in yellow, 2.286 million. Right now, our forecast is gonna be about 1.6, maybe 1.55. But I know Mike Vandenberg is telling me that in the last few weeks, gas prices have shot up again out of Opal, the hub point in Wyoming, which may change that number. Last year, it changed it from being 2.4 to being 3 million. And so we lapsed like 700, close to 700,000, which was just insane. But we can't ask for that appropriation. We can only ask for it when the legislature meets. And those numbers weren't in hand yet. So we were kind of stuck. And we'll talk about that as well in a couple of minutes, about how we might remedy that. So anyway, we may be short on mineral lease, but we also carried over a big chunk of money. We did a part ask for lapse. And so Russ, he's brand new. He's been on the job a week and a half, maybe. And we've asked him to work with Roger, the DNR's finance manager, to see if we can come up with a reliable estimate where we're going to look like by the end of this year. And if we think we're going to be short, we might be able to go and ask during this session the legislature for the appropriation out of severance tax restricted account, which UGS has never really had. So last year we entered the year with $14,000, which is not money we could go and ask for. We thought we were going to have a lot more. It looks like we entered this year at about 260,000. So we may be able to, if we can ask for an appropriation out of that, because it doesn't take it out of general funds. So we might, That's why Russ is being put under the gun. I feel bad for Russ. But if we come up with an estimate by next Wednesday, I might be able to go and ask for a little bit of this money if we think we're going to need it. We may be fine. You know, we're looking at how much we've built so far year to date on our grants and how much what our spend rate is. So we're holding things tight. You know, I'm not sure how much ASIs or raises we'll see, that sort of stuff this year. There are 3 positions for next funding year that are targeted for raises in the government budget. Executive secretaries, senior GIS analysts, this is their 3rd year in a row. The state is targeting this position. It's not as much, I think it's 7.5% this year. And GIS manager, same thing. So we have 1 GIS manager, we have a number of senior GIS analysts. So that won't affect us this fiscal year, and we'll this next year. As I mentioned, none of our proposed building blocks were funded.
Did you get feedback on that?
Yeah, why?
Yeah, no, not really.
It was similar across the department, right?
That seems strange after such an active year. You had landslides everywhere.
I know, and the legislature told me, look, if you ask, you'll get it. But DNR as a whole, they asked like, every division thinks they need a bunch more people, but there's like 91 FTE, new FTEs requested across all of DNR. And they got none of them. None of them showed up in
Is it just
the.
because it's election year and budgets are just under scrutiny, or?
I think that fiscally they're seeing this as a tight year in the state because of downturns in the economy. And so, like I said, DNR as a whole took a hit, not just UGS. They were very limited. We had a lot of interaction with the governor's office of planning budget leading up to it. You know, what would we do with this? Why do we need that? There was a ton of questions. They sent out a questionnaire. I responded to all of those. We had phone calls, but in the end, there was not a lot that came to DNR as a whole.
And for a lot of your funding mechanisms, it's not been a downturn. We forecast to be a record year of production on a base.
But that doesn't show up in my severance account yet. That'll be next year. And so and those payments are made into our budget quarterly. So it's hard for me to know even when I'm looking at, I went and sat down with Roger and Russ last week and looked at how much was in our restricted account. And it's like $70,000 less than I started with. But it's because we hadn't paid the Q2 payment. So we're trying to get a handle on it when the state's slagging on those deposits. No. And with this as active as a landslide year we had, you would have thought there would be stuff. We also asked we did the study on earthquake early warning and we presented to the legislature what it would cost. And we were asked to write a building block for that. And the government did not put it in its budget. Now we've had, again, we can talk a little bit more later, but one of the legislators asked us to write what they call an RFA, request for appropriation, to fund the implementation of an earthquake or the preparation for an earthquake early warning system. So we actually have that. That'll be in front of the legislature. It wasn't in the governor's budget.
You got a lot of mapping proposals. Are any of those going to have to be
back? I hope not.
Match.
I think we have enough staff now to match it now. Now we're also working on an assumption that we'll get about 2/3 of what we asked for. If they fund the whole thing, they're in trouble. Then we're in trouble. Then we got to go figure out how to chase that. But we're working off the historical averages. I know that we, as a state, Utah's proposals every year rank in the top 3 or 4. They score them. And I know that the USGS person over that told me, she said, if any state ever scores 100 on the review, I will give them full funding. And we've been in the 90s. You know, we get really good reviews. I don't think we'll get it, but who knows?
You know, you mentioned a couple of big important items and in terms of like overall a governor's budget recommendation for, say, Great Salt Lake, you know, 132.9 million there going to someone for Great Salt Lake work. If it's approved.
Some of that will trickle down to us.
Yeah, and for combined earthquake, flood and wildfire resilience, he's recommending 202 million. And he does have 20 million earmarked for more aqueduct.
The aqueduct. I have a slide on that.
From our work last year, so. He is recognizing the need for funding in some of those key areas, just not necessarily.
Us. So 50 million was allocated last year. And it was largely on the work that we did. All 50 million went to water resources to then hand out to the different water conservation districts. It was the initial ask was 175 million. He did 50 million last year. He's proposing 20 million this year. So they're good. We're doing good work. It may not result in money to us and some of these things. So we'll see where that goes. So like I said, there are other things happening. This is from the aqueduct. I had a slide on that for 20 million this year. So we'll continue to do good things like that. So that kind of takes us to where we're going to have a break.
We're running a little late. We need to.
We're a little ahead.
10 minutes ahead.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Take a break.
Sure.
Okay, take a break. Start
10
back at
minutes?
10. Yeah, it's 10 minutes. Hopefully Matthew makes it. If not, we'll Matthew and Mark. Okay. So I got 10-10, right?
Yep, 10 and 11.
10-11, 10-11. So I'm going to introduce, I like you have a blank page.
Yeah, if you could go, oh wait, never mind. You could, if you push the W key or the B key, it'll turn it white or black. Yeah, there's my intro slides.
That's it.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Matthew Morris. He's a mapper we hired a year ago. You probably met him at the last board meeting at some point. And he's going to share some time with us.
I think I've got 10 minutes and 15 minutes in the agenda, Mike. Oh, 20. Okay, well,
Go 10 or 15, no one will care.
All right, so this is a new thing for me. Bill just showed how to share my talk in a separate window, so we'll see how this goes. But my name is Matthew Morris. I just want to give a little bit of background on this presentation. It was I originally gave this at the Salt Lake County Watershed Symposium in November, and I've sort of packed it together with some other information. So hopefully the story feels linear, but it may jump around a little bit. Just I was trying to broaden it a little bit for this audience. But as Bill had said, I'm a mapping geologist. I've been at the UGS now 13 months. I started December 2022. I love my job. I love UGS. So it's great to be able to share a little bit of what I've been doing with y'all. And specifically what I've been working on with some collaborators here in the Wasatch and other mountain ranges of Utah. And so the talk I originally gave had this title, Mountain Rock Glaciers and Overlooked Climate Resilient Water Source for Utah. So it was very much focused on surface and groundwater. And I'll be talking a little bit about that, but also about some of the mapping work I've been doing on these features that we call out right here called rock glaciers. And my hope is that the board today has a better understanding of what rock glaciers are by the end of this presentation, but also how there's opportunity for research around rock glaciers, both for mapping and groundwater and surface water. One of my partners on this project has been Scott Hodling, who's faculty at Utah State in the Watershed Sciences Department. And then this presentation couldn't be done without the help of Adam Hiscock and Rosemary in the mapping and hazards groups. All right, hopefully this works. We're all familiar with ice glaciers. So if you've been to Glacier National Park in the 1930s, you would have seen pictures like such as this. I don't think anybody in the room was here then. That's Thunderbird Peak in the background. And there's been a lot of photo matching, looking at historic and modern photos in Glacier National Park to really highlight just how much these ice glacier features have been melting and retreating through time. And if you're able to go to Glacier National Park, please do so very soon, because you may have fewer glaciers to actually look at in the near future. But this is just a great back and forth comparison for ice glaciers. And I hope you all get a chance to see an ice glacier. They're very impressive. I know Mike has spent a lot of time walking around on them. But today I'm going to be talking about their distant cousin, which are called rock glaciers. And just more background. So we know Utah appears to be warming historically through the 20th and 21st centuries. And in addition to our warming trend, we also see a decline in our snowpack. Even including last year, we're seeing a general trend towards less snow and a bit more of a rain-dominated hydrology here in Utah. This is a percentage of change of snowpack in April, so peak snowpack across the western U.S. Highlighting just with all these red dots, snowtel sites that have declining snowpack on average. So we've got warming temperatures, declining snowpack. This creates a lot of headache for our hydrology friends and water management colleagues. And in Utah, it looks like we've had on average 20% decline in our peak snowpack going back to 1980. And this even includes last year's bumper crop of the snowpack. And then there's also some other work. This is a modeling piece of work from a couple of years ago to show that at least the Colorado River Basin could experience little snow or no snow winters in the near future. And again, there's some question as to the efficacy of this result. It's a modeling study, but even by 2062, the Colorado River Basin may have very little snow, sort of like our December. If you remember, December in the Wasatch was quite dry. This just is a background for thinking about water resources and snow. And I mentioned glaciers, but we're going to talk about if we have less snow in the future, what will be another potential source for water in our mountains in the western U.S. and in the state of Utah specifically.
And this is where I give you a very depressing picture of the future, but I offer a thread of hope for our water future. And that comes in the form of a feature like this. So we're going to play this little video. If you don't recognize this as a place in Utah, actually this may not have worked, but if you don't recognize this, that's okay. This is not Utah. This is actually Austria, which has amazing, amazing glaciers, but also features like this. So this is sort of this rumply surface covered in talus. This is what's called a rock glacier. So it's different than a solid ice glacier, but there's still ice in rock glaciers. And that's what I'm going to really focus on today. But first, I'm going to give you a background on what is a rock glacier. We see them all over the Wasatch. So there's over 160 features in the Wasatch Mountains that could be called rock glaciers. If you've ever hiked Mount Timpanogos in Utah County, I'm getting some nods from Riley over there. This is, hopefully we're still connected. This is Emerald Lake right here. And this is what's sometimes called the Temp Glacier, which is actually, we call that a rock glacier. You can see it's covered in talus. It has this very interesting lobate shape and these sort of ripply features on the surface. And it ends right here at Emerald Lake. And in the past, in the 20th century, there were actually crevasses on this glacier. There was an annual trip from BYU to actually go up there and go skiing and do ski races on the glacier, believe it or not. And it's sort of transitioned from a more of an ice glacier to a rock glacier in historic times. And if you were to take a slice through one of these, we'll actually talk about what they look like on the inside, but here's just a few other examples. So this is in the Snowbird ski area right here. If you're there in the summer, you would see many features that look like this with a sort of rumply surface again and a sharp front. And we just compare those to their ice glacier cousins. If you can recognize this mountain, I'll give you bonus points. There's donuts for an award in the back. I think Mike has probably climbed this mountain. Which one is it, Mike?
Baker.
Yes, this is Mount Baker, showing just the retreat of the Easton Glacier. And this is the largest glacier in Europe, which is in Switzerland. So we have ice glaciers, but we also have, in Utah, specifically, a lot of rock glaciers. And so I mentioned, what if you slice through a rock glacier with a saw, like it was a slice of cake? You would see a cross section, something like this, where there's that actual bouldery talus on the surface is actually only a few meters thick. And below that, you can find meters to tens of meters of ice. So think about almost 100 feet of ice potentially is the thickness of the Timpanogos Glacier. And then at the snout, the ice is actually breaking into pieces and melting. And then you have a very steep front. We geologists talk about angle of repose. The front of the Temp Glacier is 40 plus degrees, meaning it's got ice holding the rocks in place. It's too steep. And this is just another example of what rock glaciers look like. This is on the Sourdough Peak, which is in south central Alaska. And it sort of has this almost taffy-like feature where it oozes out in the landscape because it's very slow at melting and it just flows downhill. And at the UGS, I've been working on, I said, hydrology, but also mapping. So there's not been a good map of rock glaciers in Utah and in the Wasatch more broadly. And so that's been part of one of the side projects I've been working on. So if you imagine, when we look at rock glaciers, you see the surface of rocks, but there's actually ice at depth. And we know there's ice in the Wasatch rock glaciers because, as you can see here, this is in White Pine area in Little Cottonwood. I've actually seen exposures of massive ice. This is a natural exposure. There was like a little snow patch that was melting down and melted out the flank. And with my colleague here, we were able to measure several meters of ice. But then if you hike up to Temp in the summer, you'll see a crevasse right here, which goes down about 5 meters. And you can see at least 5 meters of massive ice. And there's layers in it. There's ice and then boulders and then ice again. And actually, it could be thicker than 5 meters. You can't actually see the bottom. So don't fall in this hole if you go hiking up there in the summer. But basically, we know now there's ice in these features in Utah. And then broadly, I mentioned mapping projects. How many rock glaciers are in Utah? So there's a database across the Western US that looked at all of the rock glaciers just using aerial imagery and estimates about 10,000 rock glaciers in all told in the Western US. And in Utah, we have almost 900. And most of those are in the Uinta Mountains. And then we have quite a few here in the Wasatch. So here are a couple examples. This is in the Brighton ski area. right here. The Millie lift tops out right about here. If you've been, I think it's called Maleficent, whatever. Millicent. I've never skied there, so I wouldn't. But and then if you've ever skied in Gad Valley at Snowbird, I know Mark. I've been there with Mark. This is the Snowbird Rock Glacier. The top of the tram is just off the screen right here. So these features are in our landscape. We interact with them. We mountain bike close to them. We ski over them. But we don't really know what they're doing in terms of hydrology or hazards in our landscape. And in the Alps, there's actually been a lot of work looking at rock glaciers as the initiation point for debris flows. So something to think about if you're the Snowbird managing team, looking at their equipment being just below the mouth of that rock glacier. Looking at the sort of where do they sit in the landscape, you know, I broke out here, here's the Wasatch Front. Here are the major drainage basins on the Wasatch, and just overlapping how many rock glaciers are in these big watersheds. The Weber has 34, Big Cottonwood has just over 10. Little Cottonwood, we have almost 30 rock glaciers in a very concentrated area. And then American Fork and the Provo have about 10. But just think about, where does the water supply for Salt Lake City come from? It mostly comes from these very small areas. And so starting to really pinpoint this question of, could rock glaciers be significant? If you look at the whole state, you may say, not really, but if you look at the scale of Little Cottonwood and Big Cottonwood, maybe they do have some amount of influence. As a geomorphologist, I study landscapes, and so I often think about, where do things sit in the landscape? And there's a basic way of plotting elevation called hypsometry, which is if you take all of the elevation and you just look at a histogram of where are the elevations distributed, it creates a little bar chart like this. And this is what would be plotted for Little Cottonwood Canyon, where most of the area for Little Cottonwood is actually found at higher elevations, 2,700 meters to 3,200 meters. And that also happens to be where the town of Alta is. It's pretty flat. There's a wider part of the valley. And that's also where a lot of these rock glaciers have been mapped. And so what I would like to just point out is, the rock glaciers make up a large percentage of that area. So they may look small on a map, but if you're at 3,000 meters in Little Cottonwood, almost 80% of the area at that elevation is actually a rock glacier. So they're catching a lot of snowpack, snowfall, rainfall. They also cover a lot of the Earth's surface. So maybe they do have some significance. And the question about whether they're significant for our future relates to the fact that normal glaciers have exposed ice. The sun beats down on them, they melt very quickly. Rock glaciers have this nice insulating blanket. Winnie and I were just talking about warm winter blankets. Well, rock glaciers have a nice thick blanket of rocks that keep them very cool throughout the summer. So they melt very slowly, meaning that even in a day when it's 100 in Salt Lake, this rock glacier, if it was in the Wasatch, wouldn't really know how hot it is outside. And there's some evidence to show that rock glaciers are very slow at melting. This is just a study showing, this is ground penetrating radar showing the presence of ice. And they were, in this study, they were able to show that rock glaciers had almost a zero mass balance, meaning they didn't change size or shape while their ice glacier cousin almost melted to oblivion, or melted at 5 meters a year. And we want to really think about, how is this relevant for Utah's rock glaciers? Well, I'm starting to be able to be in a place where I can actually explain to you how much melt is coming out of these rock glaciers. So this is in September, October, at the mouth of the Gad Valley Rock Glacier. This is a channel that's a couple, maybe 5 cubic feet per second of discharge. And there's almost no snow in the basin anymore. So we hypothesize this is probably ice melt. The water is 0 to 1 degree Celsius. So it's very cold. And this last summer, partnering with the professor at Utah State, we were actually able to get a small grant that funded his time. And then we approached Water Resources here at the DNR for some matching funds. And we're able to get money from Water Resources to fund a sampling campaign. So we now have geochemistry data on the stream channel throughout the summer. It's not quite ready for prime time, so I didn't include it. But we're starting a survey of these stream channels looking for ice melt. And what fraction of the stream is actually ice is our question. So we're going to continue to instrument this stream next summer. And this is important because there's 2 other reference points. There's a study in Europe that shows 60% of the summer base flow. So the channel in October has a very low flow. and that's called base flow. And 60% of base flow could be rock glacier melt, at least in this study catchment in Europe. And then here in our own backyard in the Uintas, rock glacier melt could be as much as 25% of late summer base flow. So it could be, you know, a quarter of the water coming out of Little Cottonwood, potentially. And as part of this, we want to not just look at the melt end member, but we want to understand which rock glaciers have ice. I showed you pictures of 2, but you can also get a sense for if there's ice in rock glaciers by look. Yes, Riley.
How are you getting your ice entry into the rock glacier? It's all covered.
So
see how you're getting the exit.
yeah, so you need about a decade of really high snow accumulation where you'll get enough snow that you persist through the summer with a permanent snowpack that then turns into ice. And then that slowly gets incorporated at the very top of the rock glacier. So if you go to Little Cottonwood, like White Pine, there are these patches of ice even in October, and those are slowly moving down into and being covered by rock into the rock glacier. Or in Timpanogos this last year, you could have gone skiing in September because there was such a big snow patch, and that'll probably be incorporated into that rock glacier.
So you think you are getting
Yeah.
renewal of these rock glaciers?
Yes, yeah, and it turns on and turns off. So they accumulate in really heavy years, and then they stop accumulating in warmer years, and they sort of fluctuate in cycles that way. But no, that's a great question. But if we want to understand how much ice there could be, we want to understand which rock glaciers actually have ice. And one good proxy for that is if they're moving. I haven't mentioned that rock glaciers flow downhill, and the Wasatch rock glaciers are actively moving. And that was a project that I took on this year with support of the UGS mapping group. We went to Snowbird, and we're actually able to make use of some new technology this year that we were able to purchase through the hazards group with a LiDAR scanning drone. And we took a look at this rock glacier. So point of reference, this is Hidden Peak right here, the top of the Snowbird tram. This is the rock glacier, which I've mentioned several times. And that stream that I showed you a picture of, the stream is right here. And so I was able to go out with some of my colleagues, Adam Hiscock and Rosemary, and we were able to actually fly this newer drone that we have. Very cool field work opportunity this last year, driving up into Snowbird in the summer was really neat, and take some amazing pictures of this rock glacier. So here you can see that really steep front, sort of that Rumpelstiltskin surface here. There are still some snow patches, which maybe those will be incorporated into the rock glacier in the future. But our goal was to make a LiDAR scan of the surface. So this is the pre-existing 2018 LiDAR, half-meter LiDAR, really good resolution. And then we were able to make another scan, which is this one. This is 2-centimeter resolution LiDAR. And if we flip back and forth, anybody see it moving? Like maybe if you look up here, focus where my mouse is. Yeah, so I would argue that it is moving, and some places are not. The front of it does also appear to be moving just a little bit. But this gave us a point of comparison. Is this an active rock glacier? It looks active. There's no lichen on any of the rocks. There's no trees growing on it. But we were actually able to measure rates of deformation from this, which is this image here. So the scale here it's in rate in terms of meters per year. All my units are going to be metric. I should have said at the beginning. But so the cooler colors represent no movement, but then the head of the rock glacier here is moving almost 35 centimeters a year. So that is relatively rapid. That's faster than your fingernails might grow. And then the front here is moving rapidly as well. But the middle appears to be moving only a little bit. So just an exciting result. We wanted to actually see if this feature had any movement at all, and it looks like it is moving year to year, which is really exciting because that means there is ice present, which we thought there could be because of the stream temperature, but now we know from actual observations with LiDAR. And then there are a lot of other rock glaciers, and this is satellite image. It's a method called INSAR, interferometric synthetic aperture radar, which tells you about horizontal and vertical movement through repeat satellite scans. This is from a colleague at NASA. We were just looking at this rock glacier right here. And on the scale, forgive me, it's hard to read, but zero is the green. So this is zero right here, this green color. And then warmer, so more red or more blue is horizontal movement. And all of these red outlines are rock glaciers in the Wasatch. And you'll see there's actually quite a few patches of blue and red scattered around within some of these polygons, indicating a lot of other rock glaciers might be moving. Lone Peak is here for reference. This is Bell's Canyon right here. And so there's the potential for actually a lot of ice in these rock glaciers. Yes, Bill, and then Mark.
I think I got 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. That wasn't a hand up. It's time. Yes, Mark.
Movement not on rock glaciers, they showing up.
It could be. So if it's just random pixels, it's probably noise. There could also be talus. It catches talus moving too. There's the potential for quite a bit of ice, because if it's a rock glacier with no ice, like the ice is melted, it won't move. But if it's moving, it has to have ice inside. So this brings up a good question about what's the future for this research. I mentioned we're going to continue monitoring the stream channels below rock glaciers. I've also partnered with two professors at the U, Leif Anderson and Mike Thorne. Mike Thorne is a geophysicist. Leif is a glaciologist, and they're doing a bunch of geophysical surveys of these rock glaciers using ground penetrating radar, resistivity, and gravity, and a few other field-based methods to actually model the thickness of ice. I'm really interested in trying to push for a coring project on the Timp Glacier. There's no cores of glaciers in Utah because we didn't think we had any glacial ice, but in Wyoming, there's a huge paleoclimate record that comes from ice glaciers in the Big River Range. There's the potential here for a very cool lake record related to recent dynamics that could deposit snow in Timp. And then more significant mapping of rock glaciers. Leif Anderson just put in for an EdMap, a USGS EdMap grant, to bring on a grad student to map rock glaciers and periglacial features across the state. And so Stefan and I have been working with him as advisors on that proposal. And the hope is, just to learn more about these features because we know so little about them. And with that, I'll close.
Fantastic report.
Oh, thank you, Samuel. I appreciate that. Were there any other questions in the room or online? Mark's got a question. Oh, sorry, Riley.
So was this year or this is a couple years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I took this picture in 2021.
Okay.
So that was I guess.
I think it was all under snow this year.
Yeah, it was not exposed this year. And this is just a caution. If you do walk across this rock glacier, don't fall in this big hole.
Or ones like it.
Oh yeah, there's other ones too. And Mark, did you have a question?
Any guesses on the age of the ice in some of these, or is that
So
future work?
Well, so that's future work. There's other evidence in other places that says the ice in rock glaciers it's not left over from the Pleistocene. It's all probably Holocene, so last 12,000 years. And they've grown in place. It's not sort of a relic piece of a long ago ice sheet. But they could be 11,000 years old, so still pretty close. Awesome. All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Matthew.
And I think that brings Mark up.
He just left.
Are you leaving or you coming back? My glasses.
See his glasses.
So we're on schedule, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Back on.
I don't know where you want to go. I'll just, Earth Science Week this year, talk to, I think, at least the people, board members in the room, and thank you to the board members online and for your service on our board. We greatly appreciate it. Earth Science Week this year was much like every other year. We had 570 students. We knew this year had a geologic timeline that stretched the length of the core center. So the beginning of the Earth was the doorway right outside there, and modern day was at the roll-up door at the back. And where's Jackson? Thank you, Jackson, because he designed that. He did the calculations to figure out where prominent events in Earth history fell as you walked back. And we moved the stream trailer to the back because it's quieter back there, and the gold panning's back there to make room for our earthquake station. And so now when the students walk back, they're walking through geologic time. And we got a lot of good feedback on it because we weren't quite sure how it would go. It's not easy to convey deep time to adults, much less fourth and fifth graders, but they seem to be into it. There was a lot of good things that came out of the new timeline. We had Jackson Elementary School, which is our local DNR sponsored elementary school for the first time. We reached out to them. Jackson, again, I think it was mostly Jackson for Jackson. And they came, and they have students from all over the world, including Spanish speakers. So we recruited some Spanish speaking volunteers to help engage those students. Thank you, Bill, was one of those.
Had to do the stream table in Spanish.
Yeah.
That was fun.
They also have a few new students that aren't proficient in Spanish or English yet that speak Arabic. So we wrangled up Arabic translator that went along with the group so we could engage those students as well. And we won the DNR Community Outreach Award.
This was a big deal.
Oh yeah, look at that. So
That is
serious bling. There's the bling. Everyone come up.
So in all the years they've been doing awards, I don't think UGS has ever gotten one of these annual Arbor Life Awards.
And I know that we've been nominated multiple times.
Yeah.
It was really gratifying. There's some pictures behind us. We had our spouses or significant others join us. We got to go to lunch with DNR and UGS admin. And it was very nice. There's the bling. This is Jim, who has worked here for how long?
17 years.
17 years. So Jim has been doing Earth Science Week for 17 years. The roll of the eyes because it's a lot of work.
I used to be a baby. See what happened.
Jim has done a lot of organizing with getting schools here and setting up the scheduling and doing the stations as well. And Mackenzie, who has helped with organization on our website and sign up for volunteers on the website and multiple activities. She's part of the DMP program, and she also helps with stations. She's in the video that we'll see in a second.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay. And Jackson, who has been here 3 years, about 3 years. And Jackson is taking over some of Jim's recruiting and organizing schools. It's really hard to recruit and organize teachers, it turns out. The dog eats their homework sometimes. And thank you, Jackson, for all that. He also does stations. And Tori has helped organize volunteers who are maybe more difficult than teachers to organize. Jim used to also do that. And Tori is, of course, in our bookstore as well, and she does stations as well. She's also on the video. And Stephanie, thank you, because Stephanie always keeps us on schedule. And we kind of thought that wasn't that big of a task until somebody filled in one year that I won't mention. We would get a 5-minute warning and then 2 minutes later get a 10-minute warning. And it was kind of, so thank you, Stephanie, and everyone else for everything you do. And I guess that's it. And we'll show the video. Let me mention also though, AGI is highlighting UGS as one of 3 surveys, I believe, across the country that excel and go above and beyond for Science Week. So
AGI is the American Geological Institute.
Thank you. And,
American Geoscience.
yeah, Jackson's working with them, providing them details and info. For example, we've had about 15,000 students since 2001 when we had the Earth's first Earth Science Week. Prior to that, we had Prehistory Week, which Martha Hayden, I guess, ran that.
Yeah, she started that.
Yeah, so we transitioned from Prehistory Week to Earth Science Week. And there are many, many people that are not standing up here, such as Martha, that have helped a ton, and including all of our volunteers. What do we have? 100 station hours? Is that
100?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it takes a lot of volunteers. So
Patrick's up there too.
In the picture?
No, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Patrick is another example. He helped with video this year. You're going to see some of his work and a lot of other he was there to help us.
The point is, when we wrote the nomination, they made us restrict how many we could nominate. It couldn't be an en masse, because they take them all to lunch. There's a small cash award as well that goes with it.
Cash award was divided, but the lunch was
Yeah.
properly.
So it couldn't have been, it couldn't have a cash award.
Yeah, it was us times two.
They were the same.
But you push for more. So,
Yeah.
Okay, we share the video.
So I'm gonna bring this over from here. Oh, hang on a second. Audio. Oh, I should turn off it. Yeah.
We have openings.
it's through the years, it's been harder and harder for schools to take field trips for a number of reasons. But we just had a couple blank slots, I think, this year.
Yeah, but if you know any teachers, please recommend
the word.
Information's on our website, or they can call Jackson, Jim, or myself. And if you know any volunteers, Tori's in charge of volunteer sign up.
So you had 500 this year. How many could you take?
We've done upwards of 900. Yeah, we've expanded it to 2 weeks for more prime time slots, which is like the lunch hours. And we changed it from 90 minutes to 2 hours.
So we've
different.
sent out questionnaires to volunteers, teachers, and anyone involved with Earth Science Week, so parents also. And based on the feedback, we've changed things up to make longer slots so we're not so rushed. And we start a bit later and end a bit earlier and only do 2 schools during the day to accommodate bus schedules, because they used to be able to get here earlier, and busing is becoming more and more of an issue. For Jackson Elementary, we also we offered and they accepted to pay for their buses to get here through the DNR Community Outreach Fund. Unfortunately, they haven't submitted paperwork, so I haven't paid for the bus, but yeah.
Force them to,
Yeah.
let us pay for this. Okay, thanks.
Do we have a question?
Oh, Winnie.
wondering, is it for fourth grade only?
Fourth and fifth grade is what we target because the way the core curriculum is set up, but we've had seventh
Second
graders.
to eighth.
Yeah.
And
And
homeschool spring.
right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the third
they can be
time
high school
slot
age.
is for homeschools or other alternative types of schools. Because there's some schools that they can carpool here and they're not restrained by bus schedules. So that's what we use the third slot of the day for now. Thanks, Lee.
And you're still up, Mike.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stay here. Okay,
Thank you all for coming.
legislative session started yesterday. Actually, we've been working on it for months. Yesterday was the first day of the session. These are some of the issues, bills, RFAs, requests for funding options. It's funding options.
Request for appropriation.
Appropriation, thank you. I can never remember. Legislative ask for funds that aren't in the governor's general budget. So some items that we have, a geologic data reporting. That is a bill that would require municipalities to turn over any geotechnical reports they get related to development of building sites. UGS would take those and make them publicly available, which will be great for future development, because if you're developing next to a site that had a geotechnical report, you have something to look at. It will also help our researchers with landslides and other hazards. Anything to add on that, Bill?
No, and this is a bill that's still in progress being written.
Yeah, I checked this morning and it says in
I
process.
spoke with the attorney for the legislature last week, Thursday, Friday, I can't remember.
Thursday.
So he said there's other things in front of him, but we're trying to work out some details. There's a little pushback as to who should submit the report, if the engineers or the geologists should submit them directly to us, or if we get them from the city. We've requested that the cities and counties submit them to us.
In any form,
In any form.
electronically mailed in, we'll take whatever.
An email or whatever. So it's not a lot of extra work anymore, but we want really, I mean, the ability to pull together this information across the whole valley, for example, that'd be a huge benefit.
That'd be really great.
And so we got a lot of people they're supporting it, they're just trying to figure out the best mechanism. So that language is still being worked on.
I have a copy of the protected first draft, I guess.
Yeah, and there's some changes already in progress.
Right, and the sponsor is Carl Albrecht.
Yep.
And then earthquake early warning. There's a request for $5 million for funds to do the initial work to set up an earthquake early warning system along the Wasatch Front. So this wouldn't be funding to implement the system. That would require additional funding in future years, but.
Well, this RFA has two parts. It's got the second part, which is the $1 million for the ongoing.
Okay.
I don't know if that'll happen.
Right. It's
5 million would be one time to set it up.
And this is a tough budget year. We're repeatedly told that there's not going to be a lot of money available, but that's what we hope to do with Seismograph Station, to work with us on that. Critical minerals RFA, that is for $400,000 for a new critical minerals study, and that was a response to a request. We put together the budget.
I talked to
Yes, go.
Several legislators and state officials, including Joel Ferry, who's our executive, we're on a committee about energy, and one of the outtakes was that we need to get a better handle on our critical minerals and what's available and what it would take to access them. And so they asked us for a budget. Mike Vandenberg put together a budget. About $450,000 would entail bringing at least for 3 years of non-lapse money, at least one more geologist on board, maybe two, to do some testing and do field work and to get it down. And so that RFA, we wrote it, and Carl Albrecht is the one who asked me to write it. And I just had a text about 20 minutes ago that will be heard next Wednesday in the session. So I'll have to speak to that on Wednesday. So we'll see where that goes. But that was a request that came from the legislature to us. It wasn't, but it might bring some money and resources into the UGS.
House Bill 243 riparian area amendments. That is a bill by Benyon that would require municipalities to include riparian areas in their general plans. There's a fiscal note with that because it would require DNR to hire a person to assist cities, counties, towns with creating these, well, creating riparian areas into their master plans. That fiscal note for the position was submitted by Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, but the position would be shared 50-50 with them and UGS. We also had a fiscal note because the bill requires us to create an online application type map where anyone but cities, municipalities can go and see where riparian areas have been mapped in the state. House Bill 47 will extend the sunset date of the Utah Seismic Safety Commission 5 more years. So that commission has to be renewed every 5 years. Hopefully that's not a contentious thing. It's happened every 5 years in the past without issue as far as I know.
And we have a couple of seats on that seismic safety. We worked with them to promote the aqueduct resilience funding.
Dinosaur preparation efforts. So at the far back of the core center in the garage out there is the mega block, which is filled with Utah raptors and other assorted dinosaurs. It is partially prepped. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to complete that preparation. And the Utah Museum of Natural History, who's the repository for all fossils in Utah collected from public lands, they were approached by Senator Hinkins and Representative Elissa to come up with a white paper that sort of, well, it outlines what it would take to prep the block and mount the skeletons and display them at the Natural History Museum and or possibly the new Utah Raptor State Park. So that white note is being, John's working on it today to add our logo and lay it out so that it looks a little bit nicer. It's asking for $2 million over 5 years in funding. The ask includes content for K through 12 programming related to science, paleontology, and also there's some intern positions in there for Utah paleontology upcoming students. Unfortunately, Randy, who drafted the white paper, he's at the Natural History Museum, is on sabbatical in Argentina and is available every so often, a week or two, he chimes in. And the other coordinator at the U who reached out or worked with or talked to, I don't know exactly how down, but Hinkins and Elissa left for another job. So they started the ball rolling and now we're trying to keep it going. We'll see where that goes.
Yep.
Mineral lease statute. So this is to address our mineral lease funds, which fluctuate wildly and lapse. So, as our board member that's in the room here, are you familiar with this issue? It's been ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't go into details. Bill talked with Senator Hinkins, who was willing to run a bill. Mike came up with some possible language. Currently, we're waiting to hear back from DNR Director Ferry about whether we should include any proposed changes in a cleanup bill by Representative Snyder. And I talked to Nathan yesterday, he hadn't heard back.
Yeah, so yeah, the goal, the thought process here is that rather than us ask for an appropriation every year of mineral lease funds, which we have to guesstimate 18 months in advance, And, you know, you don't know what the price of oil is going to be next week, let alone a year and a half. And so most years, our estimates have been really close, within $50,000 to $100,000 often. But last year we missed it by, like I said, our last one we missed it by about $700,000, $600,000. So we ended up lapsing all that money. So rather than having it lapse, we're proposing that we change it so that money, rather than being coming directly as an appropriation, because the statute for mineral lease royalties says that 2.25% of what the state gets will come to us. All of that will come to us. But the way it's currently working, if I don't ask for the correct appropriation, I might lose it. So even the losses I'm supposed to get, I'm losing it. And we asked in one of our building blocks to get that money back. And they didn't give it to us.
It's not lapse, you lost it.
Yeah, because I didn't ask for a full.
Right, just goes back to the general fund. Right?
Yeah, but the losses, we're supposed to get all of it. But the methodology right now is that we have to ask for that appropriation.
Without knowing what it is.
Without knowing what it is.
Right,
which is silly. So a proposed solution then is to, rather than have an ask for an appropriation of that directly, is that we have that 2.25% be deposited directly into our severance tax restricted account. And that is a non-lapsing account. So then we would ask for an appropriation from that restricted account each year. Yeah, so if we get more in there than we collect, we wouldn't lose it. It would just stay in the restricted account. So that's what we're proposing. And so we're trying to figure out what's the best way to tackle that. And Senator Higgin said he would wants to bill if we needed it. But they're proposing to do kind of one bill for all of DNR that kind of cleans up different code languages in different parts. And so I know there's one little piece that Mike had recommended we get cleaned up. And I talked with Nathan, he wants to include, he told me yesterday, he wants to include our request for this in that cleanup bill. And so, and I've also talked to the attorney at the legislature about it. He says, just put it in there and I'll figure out the right language for it. There's actually a couple places that I hadn't thought about it and needed to change. That's why he talked to the attorney.
Yeah.
And I've also talked with the legislative fiscal analysts who seem to be supportive of us doing this. Ensure we get it. So that's what we're working on.
It makes sense because it's been unpredictable.
Oh, but you know, and when we're short, it's okay, but when it's way over, I could just, we had to be able to carry that over to benefit the survey and run the survey. I shouldn't have to get back money that's statutorily.
Right. Yeah, that just makes sense.
In the past, when it's been short, it hasn't been okay. That's caused problems.
Yeah.
With staffing.
We'll manage that. Yeah.
So anyway, we can get away from that kind of funding and just to better.
That's the next step. Is
Yeah, I know this is the journey, but I feel like the more we get away from that unpredictability of that, the better.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know that I know the answer yet. Ben has his arm up in the back.
Quick question for House Bill 241, which adds the language about administration of federal clean energy programs to UGS's powers. Is that being wrapped up in the DNR cleanup bill, or is that now separate?
Yeah, that relates to the language in code now that no longer applies to UGS. So we're thinking of getting that taken out. There was some language added. When was that? 15 years ago or so, when the state energy program was housed in UGS. And so they were administering federal programs related to various types of energy programs. We don't do that work.
As part of office at the energy
That's
department.
where they were looking at adding clean energy to that list of, there's like 4 things that would be in there that, yeah, we don't, but it's all under or in the context of us administering federal funds to implement these programs. Yeah.
So which we don't have.
Can we then make a recommendation for the DNR cleanup bill to include some of that, or
Yeah.
rather remove some of that.
To remove the language.
I think you have, right?
Yeah,
You've already-
I need to follow up with Nathan. I've sent it to him, but
You
I
need to.
need to follow up again and make sure it's
Yeah,
included.
I've just brought it to people's attention in UGS. I haven't gone beyond that.
But you've talked with Nathan, right?
I have
Yeah.
shown it, shared it with Nathan. It's on my short list to do yesterday. Hopefully it'll get done today to follow up to make sure it's in there.
Yeah, so.
Clean up bill.
Yeah. Interesting that the state energy program, which is federal funding that comes to it, those are the funds that were used to do the energy resources webpage. But they came through OED, which we don't have control over that funding at all.
And I wonder, and I haven't had a chance to look, is it in OED's code or did it just?
I have no idea.
Get duplicated or did it get left behind?
I haven't looked.
That's a question you need to probably work with Nathan on.
Yeah.
Because if it's not there, right, that's probably what should happen is
They should get it.
moved from ours and plugged into theirs.
Yeah. Okay.
Stay tuned. Not on the slide because it is new as of yesterday. Representative Elissa, not Eliason, and I can't keep them straight half the time or maybe 3/4. Elissa, Washington County Representative, put forth House Bill 302, which addresses paleontological landmarks. And so according to code, currently the UGS board, if we recommend a site for state paleontological landmark designation, the board can approve that recommendation. And I'll give it what's in here, and then if you want, Bill, you can add the background. If we, I don't know if we want to do that. Anyway, so the amendment says that recommendation to and approval of the board or approval of the legislature and governor through concurrent resolution. So we could still designate paleo landmarks, but the legislature and governor could as well.
Remember a couple of years ago, the Johnson Farm asked us to do it. And we said, the board said, yeah, let's do it. So one of the people we had to reach out to was the city of St. George to do this, and they balked. And so they asked the legislature, they asked Joseph Elissa, who's out of Tocqueville, to run a bill that would give them full authority over any paleontological resources in their city limits. The bill was not for St. George, it said for any city. It's really best rested authority from the State History Museum and others. There was a huge uproar over the whole thing. And so we sat down. As soon as the bill came out, I went up to the Hill and met with Joseph and made sure he didn't fully understand. He was a freshman representative. There was a lot of nuance that he didn't understand. So over the course of the session, they reworked it so that cities that were considered first or second class could have this authority. And there's only one city outside the Wasatch Front that's not a class 1 or 2, and that's St. George. Because basically they were worried that, like, you know, any little town could say, oh, well, we're going to dig up all the dinosaur bones in our area and we're going to put them in Aunt Jane's Quonset, you know, and they wouldn't be handled or maintained properly. So that bill was written, and so now he's just cleaning this up so that it's not just our board, but if the legislature wants to designate a landmark, they could. I'm a little concerned about that language because historically we've not done it, because if that landmark is in the middle of nowhere, it's like shining a bright big neon spotlight on it and saying, hey, come take me. And so I think we got to be, I'd hate for the legislature to get on a rambunctious spree to name something and not understand the consequences. So I don't know, I think we need to talk more about that language.
There's also a line in here that ownership or control of the site doesn't change upon designation. And that there's additional language that a city has to employ a paleontologist to manage the resource.
We'll watch it and see where this goes. These things come out of nowhere sometimes.
And also not on this list because it's kind of developing. There's a lot of interest by the legislator in EDIA, so equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. And some of our DOE funded projects require DEIA plans, which is the same thing in a different order. So we want to make sure that our DOE funded projects aren't negatively impacted by any legislation. There's one bill so far, and there's rumor of multiple bills coming this way. And then just for fun, the bill count as of this morning, there are 453 House bills, Senate bills, and various resolutions. Last year, we had 933 total. Previous record was in 2012 of 892. So they're almost halfway there on the second day. And that's all I have. Unless there's anything else.
Nope. And we're up, like, as I mentioned before, in front of the legislature on next Wednesday to talk about the UGS and just trying to talk about at least the critical minerals RFA. I haven't heard about others. The RFA presentations are like 5 minutes. And the bill sponsor will get up and say something, and then I'll have to stand up and got about 2 minutes probably to say what we want to do.
And related to Bill's presentation, hot off the presses is the PI on the Bonneville Salt Flats.
Oh,
not done, but the first draft of layout is here.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
And we plan to talk about the Bonneville Salt Flats funding in front of the legislature. I want to report back the $1 million they gave us, what we've learned so far.
Which is a lot.
Huh?
It's a good story. We learned.
It's a great story. You heard that from Jeremiah last year. That's a great piece of science that is worth communicating to the general folks.
We have it all on 4 pages.
Yeah, one sheet of paper.
Okay,
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Next one. It's the only one. It's unreleased draft.
Yeah, I'll give that to you when I come to your office later. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Mike.
Yeah.
We got a schedule still?
We're real close.
Okay, good.
Can we share the strategic plan document that's in that folder?
Sure, hang on a moment.
While Bill's doing that, yeah, I'll just say, I wanted to share with the board where things stand with the strategic plan that we've been working on, really since last summer. That document.
Does this look like it?
Yeah, that's it. The document was not included in the board packet because I'm still working on a couple parts of it. But yeah, we'll share this through the meeting here, and I've got some hard copies here. Did anybody not get one that wants to look at it?
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a couple there.
Thank you.
You don't have my letter from the director yet.
Yeah, so, a little background, just as a reminder, is last spring, the department, really I think kind of the first time in a really long time, put together a DNR strategic plan, and each division or office had to provide content for that plan. I wanted to kind of build off of that in the UGS specific effort. And so we did. And just to kind of walk you through what's in here is, it starts off with just a little kind of background on who the UGS is and our various programs, kind of the focus areas of the programs. One of the things that we just recently added on page 3 is a section on GIS, Geographic Information System. So, Rosemary Faslin has recently become our GIS manager, and so she's coordinating GIS efforts across the UGS. And we felt that it was important to kind of address GIS as a standalone topic in the plan. After that, there's a section on UGS specific mission, vision, and values. And this is just the stuff that's been on our website for quite some time. Then the next section gets into how our efforts should align with DNR vision and key themes. So DNR vision and key themes were developed last spring for the DNR strategic plan. So I've included those here. Oh, it is maybe worth mentioning too that in our building block requests, we are required to include in the request the specific DNR key themes that building block relates to. So governor's office right now, is really emphasizing this kind of alignment in vision and that sort of thing. After that, it is a section called UGS key results. This is something that really Bill and I came up with as an exercise that was part of leadership training that the DNR had a number of supervisors go through. When was that? Late summer, early fall. And then recently another group of supervisors go through. It was a lead-in 30 exercise. That was the name of it. But part of this was just to come up with 3 things that we could attach a number to that would be easy to remember that that are what we consider key results. And what Bill and I chose, at least to some degree, some of these things, you would characterize them as aspirational goals or infinity goals. Things like, achieving 100% of grant-funded project reports delivered on time. Okay, well, that. Bill and I both felt like that should be our goal, and we got a little bit of pushback from managers saying, well, it's never going to happen. But we're thinking, well, it's maybe should still be a goal. And so we kept that in there. Something that came out of some of our stakeholder feedback is that, well, yeah, sometimes, it takes a little while to get the information that UGS has promised us, and stuff happens, we recognize that. But anyway, so that's what that goal is. We wanted something tied into increasing public engagement with our products over time, and that we've kind of had that as a goal for quite some time, but we just put it in, well, let's just say a 10% sort of average year-over-year increase in public engagement. So looking at our web stats and DOI publication hits and people showing up to, different types of outreach events, those sorts of things. And then the one relates to legislative activity. We'd like to see some kind of proactive change taking place each year in terms of an issue, a geoscience issue that's important to the state of Utah.
So it would be the bondal sulfates would be one. The study that you, at least that information you provided, give me an example of what would one of those be?
One of what?
A geoscience issue that has resulted in proactive.
Oh,
the funding for the aqueduct
Okay.
resilience would be a good example.
Or quick early warning.
Or the early, if you forgot, yeah.
Early warning. But bondal sulfates could be one as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of our groundwater budget studies.
Critical minerals funding.
Critical minerals, there's a bunch there.
This year, yeah, there's several. Some, in the past, historically, there hasn't been anything really, coming out of a legislative session where, there could potentially be some benefit to Utah citizens. So we're just trying to be kind of.
I think we did a lot of this Great Salt Lake work we didn't.
Right.
Yeah. And anything we, but also in terms of legislation, I'm thinking things like this mineral lease or the requirement for the geologic reporting.
That'd be a big deal.
That'd be a change to code that would be significant. So those kinds of things we were thinking about.
So the next section, issue identification, that really, well, part of it, I guess, is taking really what's gone into DNR annual reports recently, where there's, directors note in there about what they see as the divisions, kind of key issues. So there's a summary of those, and then the findings from our stakeholder surveys. We didn't get as much of a response as we would have liked to have seen, but we did get enough response to kind of identify some key, or what do we call them here?
It's an issue identification.
Kind of key themes, I guess, or
Major findings.
common themes that came out of there. So I've summarized those and included a number of direct quotes, both in terms of things that people see as challenges for the UGS and things that they see are our current strengths and successes, the things that we can build on. And then the last section, the goals and objectives, that's the longest section, but essentially each of our 6 technical programs identified really high-level goals and then objectives to achieve those goals and specific strategies under those objectives. Again, we included a goal related to GIS. We have at the moment one UGS administration goal, but we're working on something that kind of ties into the efforts that are formerly known as EDIA committee have been working on. That they're in the process of a rebrand there, just in terms of what they're called, but the kinds of work that they're doing, I think, will continue. They've done some really useful and important pieces of work that are a great resource to our staff, and we want to see that continue. So that'll be added in. So that's where the plan stands, and I guess maybe what we can do is provide the board with the digital file. We can email that out, since again it wasn't included in the board packet. But and then it'd be great if board members can just kind of peruse that and share any thoughts, I guess, suggestions.
And you can send this out for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to share when I said that. So we'll do that. I'd like to get it finalized, say, in the next couple of weeks. This time.
So how do you report on it? Like, what's the reporting mechanism on your progress, on your goals, and?
Good question. Since this is kind of new for the UGS, I guess we would maybe look for suggestions on that. That's, as far as goals, objectives, those things feed into individual employees' work plans. I've got just a little note to that effect at the end there. So that, I guess, that is one mechanism that You know, we'll be getting, this kind of updates from managers really quarterly now in terms of how those program goals are being met.
We work on with the strategic plan, and just one of the biggest challenges is, you know, how often do you revisit it? How often do people report on the progress on it? And then is it dynamic enough that you can revise it? And because when you do a big undertaking like this, you don't want to do it every year, you know.
No,
It's something that you don't want to do constantly, but you want an update, like, you know, some sort of cadence where people are reporting, and then you may or may not shift some of your goals and objectives, but it's helpful if you have some idea of what you want out of it, because you're spending all this time identifying it and coming up with goals and strategies, and then how are you going to use it? How's it going to be kind of a living document in a sense?
And I think that's probably the biggest complaint about doing these sorts of exercises. You do all the work and then nothing.
Right.
I mean, I've been in plenty of big companies in my life where a lot of effort to generate, and there's not much follow-up. So, yeah, suggestions on how we do that, you know, I suspect that as management, we're gonna need to look at it almost every month, or at least look at it.
Or just make it, my suggestion is just make it simple. Track 5 or 6. I mean, you can track certain things and then they report out, but really just report 5 or 6 things and track those, what I call imperatives that you have to, you know, that make you and keep you kind of your ship righted and make progress, and track those 6 things, and then maybe in 2 or 3 years reevaluate. You need to revise it or.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, is an annual tweaking of things in the plan?
Because you might want to look at it and go, well, those really aren't, or we have to add some more objectives, and that isn't really an objective anymore.
Right.
And people just continue to do the work. You kind of have to find that way of how it really is.
How do you make it alive?
How do you make it a real true guide? Because if it's not going to survive. It won't be useful to you. Whatever you do, just make it useful to you.
I have a comment. Recognizing that this is a strategic plan, well, I first of all, I want to say that I really agree with Elissa's discussion that it has to be a working document to be useful. Secondly, recognizing it's a strategic plan, the state, you have a lot of people in the field on highways getting to the field and things like that. Is it worthwhile emphasizing in here the importance of health and safety of the UGS staff as part of your goals? Because there are goals established here, and I think health and safety needs to be brought out. You have some absolutely stellar staff members and geologists, and any kind of injuries or damage to any of them would be a serious loss to the state. And I think we need to bring that front and center to everybody's mind at how important it really is. Thank you.
That's good.
Good
Yeah,
comments.
be part of your mission and values is your UGS is the people, and that's your most valuable. Those are their most
By far.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll work on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
A lot of work's gone into this, and I want to just acknowledge that because good job.
Okay. It? Okay.
Mike, I would really like to see it electronically too. I would just love to peruse it. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll send that out, right after this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. We're almost done. This says 11, man. A little behind. So I think the last two things I had here really was from our ASG meetings coming up. I don't know how involved the board wants to be engaged. If we get ready to host all these state geologists from around the, can't say around the world, but certainly around the country. Because it's, there'll be 100, 125 people. Might be a little bit more. I'll be in Park City, just a reminder. First week of June, June 1st through the 7th. I think those dates right? I think so. So work is well along the way in terms of planning. I think we're actually going to end up, there's a Tuesday field trip for all the attendees. I think Mike has got it set up. We'll have dinner in the rotunda at the Capitol. I think, and certainly the board would be invited to attend that. Right?
Yes, they are now.
I would invite us. Yeah, we could, yeah, I'll find a way to make that happen. And so we're trying to figure out who our speakers are going to be yet. But we'll probably include a tour of the base isolators. I think our geologists would love to see that. If you've not done that tour in the basement of the state capitol, that's a pretty cool little tour to go to. So a lot of people don't understand that, so kind of seeing it up front is a good one. I thought about trying to get him into the Salt Lake Temple, but that would probably be taking a huge an act of God, maybe. To make that happen, but because that's still an active construction zone. That's the hard part on those.
We're gonna have 100 people on that trip.
100 people. That'd be too many. Challenging. So anyway, but it does require in past states, and I know Rick did it before. He said he asked for sponsorships from local companies and agencies. So this is where we're hoping maybe the board can help us reach out. I can't ask as a state agency. I can ask as a member of the AASG for sponsorship, but I have to be careful as a director of a state agency because I can't make it look like I'm asking on behalf of the state to provide some sponsorship funds for an event or a private, non-profit, but private organization. And so I think you had somewhat
in that folder. Yeah, when we hosted the meeting in 2009, Rick had put together some kind of template letters that I believe were sent out to different organizations that, just to feel out their level of interest in being a sponsor. And so we could do something similar this year. If any board members have any particular, industry contacts or organizations, that they might feel comfortable reaching out to, we could provide something like this.
So you have one for oil and gas.
Yeah, there's, the oil and gas industry, the mining industry. We're looking at a field trip stop at the Bingham mine, and actually Holly and Steph Mills at UGS, they have contacts there. So we're going to reach out to Kennecott to see if they might be interested in stepping up as a sponsor. So yeah, we'd love to hear if any of you have ideas of people to reach out to, and then if you have a contact and wouldn't mind doing that, reaching out, it'd be a huge help.
Well, we can certainly adapt this to match. We'll update it for this year.
Yeah. We also have in the works a sponsorship form So there's, I think maybe 4 different like financial levels of sponsorship, you know.
This will be on our webpage, right, that we stand up?
Yeah, it'll be there. Claudio Berti, who is the current AASG treasurer in the Idaho State Jail Alliance, he's working on standardizing a form for AASG. Hasn't been done in the past. It's come to the host surveys to just generate their own form. He'd like something a little more uniform moving forward. So he's working on that. But what that summarizes associated with these different levels of sponsorship is the value for, you know, tax purposes, and basically what they would get from this. And it kind of comes down a lot to advertising in the meeting program, on the meeting website. For some entities, they might have interest in attending part of the meeting. And so there's complimentary, you know, meeting registrations that are offered up, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know, thoughts, questions, comments?
I don't have a lot of connections, but I'm happy to sign a letter and to just help try to distribute them. I think probably other members of the board might have some more specific contacts, but I'll think about it. But I think part of it is you want kind of like a unified effort, you know, get your template and your levels of contribution going. You could send that out to us, and then, you know, request potential people we could reach out to. And then you might have some people, because if you can't do it, then you might want to suggest us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will, would we be able to, with the board members, Mike, could we receive a copy of this form?
Yes. Yeah. When the sponsorship form is finalized and available, I can get that to you all.
We can create a current version of the letter.
Yeah, along with a current version of that letter that Bill had up on the screen a minute ago.
That'd be fantastic. I think that'd be the tools that we would need to kind of make some contacts.
All right.
Okay, appreciate it.
We'll have those soon.
Okay. I think we're good enough there. Still get us out of here. So, ideas for field trip.
Riley told me his ideas before he left.
What's his idea?
And he said, well, guess what one of them is.
Wrap the San Juan River.
No, that would be fun. No,
Wrap the
just-
Green River.
He talked about going out to the Uinta Basin, doing oil and gas. And then he also talked about lithium. It's not that far from here, is it?
Which one? Which?
I was thinking of Intrepid. Is it Intrepid?
Intrepid does not get too much. US Mag.
US Mag. I mean,
US Mag is
yeah.
producing lithium right now. There are some efforts to try and produce some in the Paradox Basin going on right now.
That was just some thoughts.
Uinta Basin, okay. And certainly, and Mike Vandenberg is online, probably knows it. And between Mike and Riley, they put together a Green River / Uinta Basin field trip. We're going to include one of those in our field trips for the June meeting as well, or the ASG. So, any other thoughts for a field trip? This is your opportunity to speak up.
Well, this is Becky, and yeah, I was thinking that it was time to go to Eastern Utah. So Uinta Basin would be great. There's the Carbon Safe project. I don't know if there's anything to look at there. And then earlier we talked about like Matheson wetlands, maybe
Moab.
that's by Moab. But anyway, yeah, the eastern part of the state.
Okay. With a small group, we might be able to get. Can I say this out loud? We could approach American Gilsonite.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
I've taken my students there several times. And that's a cool exercise. If you've not been underground in the Gilsonite vein, it's like the elevators are like 2 to 3 person elevators.
I've been in one in Park City, Silver.
Yeah.
The elevator.
Now these are the Gilsonite veins might be 4 to 5 feet thick max. And so it's a pretty interesting thing to do. So they've hosted like student groups of up to maybe 20 that I've taken there. So it was a small group, but the big group would not be viable with a group of our size. But the reason I mention that because that's right near Bonanza. That's right where Bonanza is. Bonanza, the headquarters from Updat Center in Bonanza, which is a very, I think Mike used the term today, Mike Dannenberg, Hamlet.
Oh.
So if we get out to that area, you can also look at some of the Green River Shale opportunities. Yeah, I think we could do some out there. Can we swing a trip down to Moab? I don't know. That's a pretty big loop.
Do a 3-day trip.
We do a 3-day trip. We've moved it to a 2-day trip in recent years. But yeah, if you did a 3-day, you could certainly pull that off. Any comments about 1 day versus 2? I got to put this up on the screen. Hang on a minute. This is from Mike Vandenberg.
10 days.
Yeah. To do it right.
Do it right. Thank you, Mike. I thought that's pretty good. Mike loves the Uinta Basin, and Riley does too. And Riley would be a huge resource for such a trip on something like that. He would have. When I've taken my students out to the Uinta Basin, we spend 2 days in the basin visiting well sites, water management, injection, how much, what type of recoveries you do. Try and get out of drilling rigs.
So if you did like Uinta Basin and Moab, you would stay 1 night in Vernal and 1 night in Moab. Is that what you're thinking? If you did that?
If we did 3 days, well, we got to figure out
Right.
what kind of case is there for a 3-day field trip versus a 2-day.
I'm in.
You're in.
3 days.
Anybody?
But I mean,
And we can do that. I mean, we've done that before. I know when they wrapped at the San Juan. Did you do that trip?
I did not.
That predates you. I don't think everybody. That was definitely a 3-day because you're
But
gonna.
I did a lot of those 3 days with Rick.
Yeah.
They were mostly 3 days. It wasn't
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The Riley and MVP show.
So would
Another
that
comment.
make it Thursday to Saturday or Wednesday to Friday if you did the 3 day?
Good question.
Board.
Wednesday to Friday.
Wednesday to Friday? Yeah. Okay.
I
Would you?
could do 3 days and I could do Wednesday to Friday or Thursday to Saturday, whatever.
Okay. A strong preference or dislike for one or the other? I know Becky's comment. You don't care? Either one? More comments? How do we get 10 days in a 3-day weekend?
And then does that also mean you do Moab first and then River? I need to look for hotels. Moab is not easy to get into, so I need to start looking.
And Vernal's not
for
that
Moab.
cheap anymore either.
Right now, Vernal's state per diem, but yeah, possibly in September, it might not be. So if I can look in booking and getting things reserved, then I can do that now and get the lower rates. Possibly.
Well, let's sit down and we'll hash that out after this. I know. So would there be an interest to do both Moab and Uinta Basin then?
Well, I mean, I think that would be great. Part of it's what you do for too.
Okay. So we're gonna afford to, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
And we need to get with, if we're gonna do Mathis and wetlands, I need to get with Hugh and see if there's days that are better than others when they can act. I don't know the answer to that yet, Cheryl, what I'm trying to say. I understand what you're up
Well, if
against.
I could do potential, I can always cancel, but if I can book them because we might know that this is the dates we're probably gonna do, then it's better to just reserve it and be on the safe side. So that's why I was just.
Okay. Mike Vandenberg says lots of driving for Vernal and Moab trip in 3 days. Like I said, we need to sit down and probably scope out what a route before you book.
Right, no, I'm not gonna.
We'll look at what a route might look like and how long we'd be driving and what we might see. Okay, so I think we have some ideas there. Okay, good. I don't have anything else. Does the board have anything else for us?
Do any of the board members online have anything else?
I don't.
I don't.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. It is now 11:41 and this meeting is now adjourned. I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you. It was
Yeah, thank everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Great report, great presentations, and good luck next week. If you need any support from us, Bill, the legislature, let us know.
Okay.